If you're new to Kommander and aren't sure which type of deck you may enjoy or what your playstyle is, then this is the video for you. Playstyle is the manner in which you enjoy playing the game, and today I'm going to break down the different types of players recognized in the Magic community, what playstyles these categories lend themselves to, and my progression and experience with them over the last few years. Hey everybody, Jason Comm here, and over the years the design and R&D team at Wizards has recognized three distinct types of players that they build cards around for each set of Magic they produce. Each of these profiles lends themselves to a different playstyle that can give you insight into deck building archetypes and cards you may enjoy. The first profile created by R&D was the Tournament Player, later renamed Spike. Spike is the type of player that loves winning above all else. Deck building and creativity often take a back seat, and pet cards with big splashy effects are often overlooked for more optimized and efficient cards and abilities. Spikes often play the strongest commanders with the strongest cards. As long as Spike is winning, Spike is happy. If Spike plays 10 games and only wins 9, Spike is happy but wishes they would have won that 10th game. To Spike, the thrill of competition and triumphing over any opponent keeps them coming back for more, and that's why we love Spike. Some classic commanders for a Spike player would be Urza, High Lord Artificer, Zur the Enchanter, and Kess, Dissident Mage. While I like to win, it isn't my main motivation for playing Commander. I have played with many Spikes before, and they always keep me on my toes and have me constantly improving my threat assessment and decision making. What I've done since is I've built a Spike style deck that can hang with these types of players and throw back in their face whatever they dish out of the table. It's a lot of fun. The next profile is Timmy, the Power Gamer. Timmy loves big splashy creatures and effects, and he doesn't want to win small, he wants to win big and completely smash his opponents. Timmy is often a very social player and enjoys playing the game with friends just as much as Spike likes to win. To Timmy, winning isn't the most important aspect of playing. Instead, it's sitting around the table with his buddies, slinging huge spells and smashing face. If Timmy only wins 3 out of 10 games, but he absolutely dominated in those 3 games, Timmy is happy. Some classic Timmy style commanders are Kalia of the Vast, Xenagos, God of Rebels, and Zaxara the Exemplary. I am a Timmy player at heart with a love of giant X spells and swinging in for huge damage and playing massive spells. 2 of my favorite decks are Vial Smasher Thrasios, big spell, big damage. My Selvala, Heart of the Wilds deck with big mana, big creatures, big smash. I'm also a very social player at the table and often play because it brings me and my friends together where we create some awesome memories together. A lot of new players start off as Timmys, and as they become more acquainted with the game, some of those players branch off into other profiles. We absolutely love Timmy. Now the last player profile is Johnny the Combo Player. Johnny is a highly creative player in which Magic is a form of self-expression. He likes to build decks around cards not often used and win with them. To Johnny, the quantity of wins doesn't matter at all, but if he builds a deck around some crazy combo or interaction and wins with it, Johnny walks away happy. To Johnny, deck building is often more enjoyable than playing the game itself. A fun evening for Johnny would be sitting down with his bin of bulk cards and building a unique deck out of them. Some awesome Johnny style commanders are Cody Vociferous Codex, Brea Ethereum Shaper, and Zada Hedron Grinder. I'd like to think I have a little Johnny side to me. One of my favorite things to do now that I have a decent collection is sit down with only the cards available to me, build a deck, and play it against some of my friends. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but the creativity and joy you'll feel when you win with a deck built from scraps against optimized net decks is unlike any other. We absolutely love Johnny. Now, it is unlikely that you'll be just one of these profiles, but understand that Wizards develops cards for each set that speak to each of these profiles. You may even hear these terms out in the wild, and now you have a way to communicate with the larger Magic community what playstyle you lean toward, which is the whole point of this video. Now, the last topic I'd like to cover are the 4 main playstyles you'll run into in most trading card games. There's aggro decks, mid-range decks, control decks, and combo decks. Aggro decks are designed to be aggressive and put the pressure on your opponents quickly and never let up. The goal with aggro decks is to immediately go for damage to kill your opponents. In Standard, the classic mono-red aggro decks are a great way to rack up a lot of wins by playing cheap and hasty creatures that can dish out lethal damage before your opponents have a chance to build and react. But in Commander, this is much harder to do, given it is a multiplayer format with each opponent starting with 40 life. However, just because it is difficult doesn't mean it can't be done. And when someone puts together an aggro Commander deck, watch out. The game can be over before you know it. The canonical example of an aggro deck in Kommander is Krenko Mob Boss. My buddy Aaron plays this deck, and it is extremely nasty against control and combo players. If left unchecked, Aaron can easily win by turn 5 or 6 with Krenko cranking out tons of goblins alongside an Impact Tremors or a Perforos to deal lethal damage to everyone. If you like forcing your opponents to make some tough choices while dealing an insane amount of damage quickly, then aggro decks are perfect for you. Be careful though. While these decks come out the gate fast, if your opponents are able to rebuild or set up a good defense, then you may run out of gas. I love the reckless abandon these decks play with. It makes for such short and fun games. It's just a blast. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about control decks. These decks keep your opponents in check long enough for you to set up your board for the win. Often these decks have a high removal count and often involve the colors black, white, and blue. The best and worst example of a Kommander control deck would be centered around Grand Arbiter Augustin IV. My brother has this Kommander and told me the whole point of the deck is to prevent his opponents from being able to play a single spell while he tries to Kommander damage them out until they scoop. Now, this is not your standard control deck, but it exemplifies the extreme of that playstyle. One of the more common control decks you'll see today is Hinata Dawn Crowned. This highly interactive deck makes it cost much less to remove your opponent's permanents while protecting your own until you're in a late position to win the game. Control decks tend to be late game focused, and once they kind of get there, you need to really be careful. While it may take a while to set up their engines and synergies, once a control deck has removed all the threats with their board intact, the next untap could be your last. Such a fun way to build a deck. A lot of interaction is fun to play with. It makes you more engaged at the table when it isn't your turn. While these decks are particularly good against combo decks, they're extremely vulnerable to the aggro decks running around since they may be dead by the time they have their pieces in place. Now there is a middle ground between these two competing playstyles, and that is a mid-range deck. While slower to develop than the aggro deck, they can still operate at a blistering pace. On the flip side, these types of decks can also compete with the late game control style decks by having enough innate value and synergy to not run out of gas. A lot of Kommander decks end up as mid-range decks for good reason. They can play almost anywhere. A great example of a mid-range Kommander you'll likely see is Ghirid Conclave Exile. While Ghirid doesn't have the insane punching power Krenko does, it has enough board presence to deter the aggro deck from attacking them first. On top of that, because the Kommander focuses around token creation, there are a ton of cards that synergize with it and offer great payoffs so that it doesn't run out of gas. If you're a newer player, I'd recommend you try to build mid-range style decks first and play some green. These decks will give you that consistency of mana and board presence to allow you to play at nearly any table. And lastly, we have combo decks. These are decks built around playing particular cards together that often create an infinite loop designed to win the game. One of the first combo decks I ran into was Niv Mizzet Perun. This Kommander is absolutely ridiculous because it has so many 2-card combos that will flat out win the game should you not have any counter spells or removal ready. For example, simply play Niv Mizzet, enchant it with Curiosity, then play any draw spell. Niv Mizzet will activate first, dealing 1 damage to an opponent because you drew a card. Then Curiosity will trigger when you deal that damage to an opponent and let you draw another card. Then you just rinse and repeat and machine gun down your opponents one by one. Combo decks are extremely dangerous to play against, but if you know their tricks beforehand or have knowledge of many of the combos possible for their commander's color identity, you'll be in a better position to remove one of their key pieces. Sometimes removing a single permanent at the right time can take away a combo player's chance to win the game at all, making it high risk but very high reward. Building a combo deck can be extremely fun, and getting to play your combos out and win is a highly rewarding experience. If the interactions between cards excites you the most about playing Kommander, then you might just be a combo player. Over the years of playing this game, I have transformed so much and learned so much about myself along the way. When I first started playing, I thought I would like control style graveyard deck built around Gerard Golgari Lichlord. While my first Kommander deck was nothing short of a dumpster fire, it didn't give me that feeling of excitement I saw in my friends when we were playing. I started and very much still am a Timmy. I don't care about winning as long as I'm having fun and my deck gets to do its thing. I love big splashy spells and creatures, and Kommander is more of a social game than a competitive one to me. Over time, as I built my collection, I realized that simply playing big creatures wasn't enough to keep me excited to play, but building decks from my collection and net decking became an obsession. This is when I started to become more of a Johnny. Still to this day, I will pull out all my bolt cards and sit at my table for a couple hours to build a new Kommander deck. Making something from nothing while playing cards not even listed on EDHREC as suggestions brings me so much joy that I can enjoy this game without even playing it. Now, when I get together with my buddies, I'm excited to show them what I've put together, and I look forward to seeing all the shenanigans they have ready for me. Don't let these player profiles define you. The game is constantly evolving, and so will you. I hope this video gave you some insight into some of the basic terminology used in Magic, and I can't wait to read your story in the comments. So jump down there, tell everyone your journey from when you started playing, and who knows, maybe a new player will read it and get inspired. Thanks for watching Kommander MTG. This is the Kommander, signing off.